Let's take another look at that Muddy Waters layout. We can see it as a grouping of elements within the rectangle, but there's another way to see it, and that's in terms of negative space. Sometimes we neglect the unused part of our composition, the parts that don't have content, and those are the parts that we call negative space. The fact is, negative space is just as important in composition and designing as the content itself, as the zones or the places where we're putting content. And we want to think about negative space right from the start of the design process. So let's say we're working with a document and we've already built our grid. We may want to talk about the parts of our grid that are inviolate, they're sacred. Nothing can go there. And when we drop content within that embrace of negative space, the result will be quite beautiful and quite recyclable. Again, having an idea of structure and scaffolding before we start letting negative space define areas where we're putting content, we'll see that things look absolutely beautiful. We use negative space every time we work with word processing, when we set margins or we set areas around between columns of text. And just briefly, so you know, margins, which we're all familiar with, are those areas around the edge of our composition. And of course, gutters, you may not know actually, are the areas between columns of text and design elements. They're both incredibly important. Negative space affects how our audience feels, and it affects our relationship with our audience. We can invite our audience in, direct their attention, lead them within a composition using negative space, or if we want, and we see this sometimes in design, we can make them feel a sense of tension, we can make them feel a sense of movement, depending on what we do with our negative space. For right now, let's just say our best design practice number 3 is negative space is just as important as content.